Self-introduction. My name is Anita, and I started this program a little over 4 years ago when my life had become unmanageable, and I was a bottle of vodka and pills away from ending it all. I stumbled upon Tim Fletcher and his teachings at the 11th hour of my glorious, painful life, and this journey began for me in earnest, and as of July 2nd, it'll be 4 years of continuous sobriety for me, which has been a first since I was like 7. Thank you. Thank you. So, to continue on, we're on week 4 of the 50 characteristics of complex trauma. 50 characteristics of complex trauma, and the 50 characteristics are benchmarks for us, for somebody who has deep emotional complex trauma wounds from our childhood. So when I came into this program, I said, well, I'm not sure if I have this complex trauma, Tim, that you're talking about. So he says, well, check with me after you've gone through the 50 complex trauma. And I nailed just about every one of them. So we're going to break down what complex trauma is for you that have just joined us here tonight. So we define complex trauma. A simple trauma is a one-time event, so that could be like a car accident or a rape or someone broke into your house and you were violated. It was a one-time event. Complex is something that's happened to us over a long period of time. So for most of us, that happened when we were in our childhood, usually from the age of that we can remember, from 5 to about 15 years old. So that's complex. The trauma is broken down. We've broken down into 4 separate categories. The first one's abuse, which could be physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and mental abuse. The second one is abandonment. That's a form of trauma. So a lot of kids, they said, well, you know what, I didn't have this kind of abuse growing up, but, you know, my parents divorced when I was 5. I felt like toilet paper on a shoe. I kind of raised myself, the neighbors, the older siblings raised me. So that sense of abandonment over a long period of time, that causes deep emotional wounds. For some kids, they were put into the CFS system. That is huge abandonment issues. They feel displaced. They don't have a place where they feel like this is my home, this is my grounding. Parents' divorce could be a death of a parent, and then there's neglect. Some people say, well, I wasn't abused, I wasn't abandoned. Well, I'm second youngest of 5. The parents decided at 3 they're done raising kids. So me and my little brother, we were neglected. We were raised by our older siblings. So there was a lot of neglect. The last category for trauma is my basic emotional needs not being met. There's 12 basic emotional needs. I'm not going to go through them all, but the most important ones, I think, are unconditional love in a home, acceptance, respect, validation. Kids need that growing up. We need that like lifeblood because it forms our identity. So if your basic emotional needs aren't get, if all of your needs, your shelter, your food, your clothes, that's all being met, but you've got emotional needs that are not being met over a long period of time, that's very damaging, that's very wounding to us. Okay, so Tim left off last week on 9, which was anger. So today of the 50 characteristics of complex trauma, we're at number 10, lie. Most of us learn to lie at a very young age. I remember lying all the time, and it wasn't until Tim explained it to me 4 years ago why I lied. Well, I lied to protect myself, is to keep myself safe. The truth hurt. The truth got hit. The truth got punished. The truth was never a warm and fuzzy thing in a home. So, At a very young age, lying became a safety mechanism that I latched onto really quick. So most of us are afraid of getting hurt, which is why we start to lie. It could be also that we're afraid of losing somebody. We're afraid of having them be angry at us, so we're going to lie. Telling the truth, they always say, you can tell me anything. You can tell me anything. Well, those are words, but are the actions matching the words? Did they say you can tell me anything, and as soon as you tell them, like, whoa, you're getting punished, you're getting blasted? Well, no, then you can't tell them anything or everything. So lying is something that it's a survival tool. We learned how to survive. We learned how to cope. Our basic needs weren't being met in some way, in some form or another, so we're going to find another way to get those needs met. So we're going to lie. Now, the one thing about lying, though, is you're going to have to keep a file folder for everybody that you lie to. I had a lot of file folders in my cabinet, and it was really tough to keep track of all the lies. So you're constantly on edge. You're constantly nervous. You're constantly going, oh my God, who's that person? Okay, dear God, what's their file? What did I tell them in the past? What have I told them? Okay, I got to go through that file. And it's exhausting trying to keep up with all the lies. So being authentic, I never learned how to do that. I learned how to lie. As an adult, I didn't know how to shut it off. So it could be, at the end of the day, I'll come home and say, why did I lie about that? I didn't have to lie about that. Well, the one thing about lying, though, is we can't discern in that moment whether or not that's danger, perceived danger, is it real danger? Just your knee-jerk reaction is, I'm going to lie about that, because I have to keep myself safe. I have to keep myself protected. What happens, though, is we lie so much that the guilt associated with all of that lying feeds our shame. And the guilt and the shame are what keep us in our addiction. That's what keeps us needing something to numb the guilt and the shame. So we're adults, we're lying, we're feeding guilt and shame. We don't want to do that. We do it anyway. We have to numb and avoid because now I can't live with myself because I'm becoming this person I said I'd never become. And it's a cycle that you just can't get out of. It just goes over and over and over again. And then that becomes our normal. Next one, number 11. Wearing masks. We learn at a very young age, if we were traumatized, to wear masks. Why? Because we can't be authentic. Being authentic means we're vulnerable. Again, it's about staying safe. So if you were never validated growing up and that who you are is okay, no matter what is going on with you, we're going to love you. I probably would never, nobody would ever have to put on a mask or learn how to put on a mask. But eventually, you figure out pretty quick when you're walking on eggshells, when you've got an alcoholic father and an enabler as a mother, and she's codependent, and they're just involved in their own vortex of toxicity that I'm just watching. I'm watching to see what mask am I going to need to put on right now just to fly below the radar. So, wearing a mask is basically we pretend to look and act like we think others want us to be, but it's not the real us. Again, what's our number one priority? It's stay safe. We need to stay safe. We've buried ourselves so far down and insulated ourselves from staying safe, from all the dangers out there. So again, a survival skill that was learned early on to protect ourselves from our abusers or bullies or anybody that is doing us harm. But what happens is you have a lifetime of wearing masks. It keeps you very disconnected from who you truly are. I didn't find out who I truly was until 4 years ago, and I'm 54. So I had no idea. I had kept myself buried so far. Being authentic, I had a clue. So wearing masks, I had millions of them. I had tons and tons. I had tons of friends. I was outgoing. I was this mask. I would always tell people, I would always tell my sister, my dear heart sister, I like who I am when I'm with that person. And she didn't tell me till years later. That really scared her when I'd said that. Like, what do you mean you like yourself when you're with them? Because I would put on a mask with whoever that I was with. I could mimic anyone. I'm a chameleon. I was engaged to be married 9 times. What does that tell you? They all said, you are just like me. You are exactly like me. I never thought I'd met anyone exactly like me. And I inside thinking, no, I just mirrored you back really well. So again, that's wearing a mask. That's nothing to do with Anita. And yeah, you can keep that up for a while, but 2 years is about my max. Number 12, isolate. Now, this one here again, understand all these 50 characteristics that are traits of someone that has suffered from complex trauma and still does today. These are all ways of staying safe. Isolation is a big one, and there are 3 different ways that we isolate, so we've broken it down. Number 1 is geographically. Geographically, isolating pretty much means you move, you run. You feel perceived danger, you feel unsafe, you feel things are just getting a little dicey, run. I moved 52 times in 27 years from Newfoundland to BC, so I lived everywhere. I was a runner. I never realized that was a form of isolation, again, until Tim showed me that, yeah, that was a form of isolation because I could start over. I'm never really getting to know people below the surface, right? I'm keeping myself safe. So that was a form of isolation. You change your friends when things get, all those lies, all those folders, they get too much to handle. Well, it's time to move. It's time to change friends. It's time to change jobs. It's time to change everything. So that's a form of isolation. Second one is behind walls. Now this one here is probably one of the first ones that we learned as children because we couldn't run, we couldn't fight, so we learned to isolate behind walls. So that's, putting up that wall where, the light's on but nobody's home. We shut down emotionally. So, my sister was a good one at that. She was a reader. So she would immerse herself in her books. And literally, the house was being torn apart. There were punches being thrown. And she looked like Anna Green Gables with her book. And she used to tell me, I used to go in the book. I couldn't hear anybody. So that was a form of isolation. That was behind walls. She went to a place where nothing bothered her, right? So that's behind walls. You don't feel anything. The third way to isolate is... Marie? Is through pseudo-intimacy. Pseudo-intimacy is fake intimacy. Again, guilty. All those engagements, all those boyfriends, all of those, my God, this is the love of my life. I've had too many to count. So basically, I'm going to find a relationship that's going to take my mind off of my reality. That's a form of isolation. I didn't know that. Relationship junkie I was. Why? Because I didn't have to look at anything real. I was just, island hopping, never getting below the surface of who I am. So the typical cycle of a relationship junkie is you first meet, within 2 days you're falling in love. Within within the week you're moving in together, planning a life, and within 1 to 2 months the relationship's over. Next. Again, relationship junkie, it was a form of isolation. I used to think that I was an outgoing person. I am predominantly an introvert. That outgoing nature, that's a learned thing, but I had to keep hopping around to different relationships. And it was exhausting, and it was a form of isolation, and I couldn't hide, so then, therefore, I needed to hide behind, look at all of these masks and personas and all of these different people that I can be with all of these different engagements, and it was exhausting, but it wasn't me. So with any form of these isolations, the geographical, the pseudo-intimacy and behind walls, you can keep it up for a while, but it doesn't last. It's not real because who we are is buried so deep down inside of us that we are not attached to the things that we feel. Who we are is way down here. What we do is way up here. And for most of us that have lived through complex trauma, you know, a toxic environment growing up, you disconnected such a long time ago. And yeah, we may not be in that situation anymore, but we don't know how to reconnect. No one's ever shown us. No one ever taught us, and no one ever. Tim does that. This program does that. But you stay disconnected, right? So a lot of our old wounds, they say, oh, well, don't carry your baggage into your next relationship. Well, you know what? If you don't know what your baggage is, you're going to carry it into the next relationship. Any of these 50 characteristics is baggage. Label that as the baggage. That's the things that we have to identify that, oh, I do that. Oh, I do that. Yeah, that's me too. Okay. And it's not to shame us. It's not to make us feel guilty. It's to identify and go, okay, that's where I can start from. I know where I can start. It's funny because I'm also a teacher at the React Treatment Center with Tim Fletcher, and I'm a counselor there. And within the first week, pretty nearly every client will say, wow, I've never been real. I've never been able to be who I am. Warts and all, flaws. You people are strange. You guys are not talking about the weather. You're talking about real stuff. And we all have the same characteristics. We all have the same flaws. We're all working on the same thing. So I think the greatest gift that was given me when I came into recovery was to find out, when I finally opened up, I'm not alone. I thought I was the only one that was weird. No, you guys are all weird too, and it's great. So recovery is awesome. It's where I finally found my own tribe. Next one. Manipulate. Again, it was a survival skill. It was a survival tool. It was a coping mechanism that we adopted at a very young age. We learned that on our own, and we learned it because we needed to. What happens when we were never or rarely given what we needed as children? To survive, we learned to manipulate others to get our needs met. If I wanted to go to my girlfriend's place on the weekend, I was 7, and I wanted to have a sleepover, I'd have to start with Mom on Monday and doing nice things for her and cleaning the floor and just doing for her, buttering her up on Monday, just because I needed to go. I needed to leave. I needed to be at my friend's place. My grandfather was a pedophile, and he sexually abused me when I was younger, so I needed to get away on my weekends. So I learned to manipulate so that the answer would be yes. If I asked her straight out, Mom, can I go stay at Betty Ann's this weekend? No. Why? Because I said so. I knew the answer. I've tried that way. So what am I going to do? I learned to manipulate. Our caregivers, they should be giving us. They should be meeting our needs, our basic needs, no matter what we do and how we behave. Every child deserves unconditional love, acceptance, and validation, no matter what we do. Oh, when I found that out, I thought, really? I thought I had to prove myself. We had to prove ourselves worthy before getting validation, before getting praise, before being accepted. I had to earn it, right? That was the message that I got growing up. We learned when to and when not to ask for what we needed based on the moods of our caregivers. I always knew exactly how Dad felt when he came in the door and how he put his keys on the table. I knew exactly what kind of mood he was in. So I would What do I need? Oh, okay, that can wait. So us kids, we always kind of were way down there on the back burner because it was always about them and their moods. So trying to gauge where they're at. And it's like I said, it's a full-time job. Asking directly for what we wanted and needed was way too risky because the answer could be no. So we learned to become masters at convincing others to do things for us. Now, okay, we were kids and we learned to do that. We get it. And yes, you had a really good reason. Good. Well, now what happens when you're 30 years old and you're 40 years old and you're still doing that? What is that? Why can't we stop? Because it's a learned behavior. It's a brain circuit that we have been doing over and over and over again. It's our nano response, knee-jerk reaction. We don't know how to stop that unless we actively recognize it and say, okay, I'm going to start making a list to myself every time I manipulate. I'm going to start paying attention. I am going to actively work on my manipulating. Of course, I was doing really good with that. For me, my sister, love her dearly to death, didn't know that yet, so I had to teach her not to manipulate and just ask. I'd say to her, you don't have to start 2 days early to ask me to drive you someplace. We're going to our cousin's place for a games night. You don't have to start 2 days early. But I knew what she was doing, so I could tell her with love, with gentleness, and say, you can just ask. I'm guaranteeing you 99.9% of the time, I'm going to say yes. But don't be afraid that if the answer is no, I'll have a really good reason, and you won't have to be afraid of being rejected. She goes, oh, okay. So manipulating, that one's good. That one's a tough one to break, but you know, it's scary when you ask somebody, hey, can I get a ride downtown with you after class? Period. It's terrifying because the answer could be no. Instead, I'm used to, hey, nice shirt you got on there. So, wow, how do you like class? It's good, eh? Yeah, where are you from? It's good. Yeah. Oh, yeah, me too, yeah. So where do you live? Oh, I know that. Oh, yeah, I know that area. Actually, I'm just like the neighborhood right over. You wouldn't by chance be okay with giving me a ride home after, would you? I mean, I would start. I'm buttering this person up, you know, and it's manipulation. And you know that feeling you get when someone manipulates you and you feel greasy? You just feel like they're greasy, man. I just feel like, ugh. Well, that's somebody's manipulating you. We all have that feeling, and it's disgusting, and it's an awful thing. I did that my whole entire life, but I didn't know I was doing that. It's a good one. Number 14, we create what we fear. We have a lot of fears. And I apologize for the photocopying. That was all me. Messed it all up. So it's all there, but you might have to look for it. Create what you fear. We have a lot of fears if we don't know what our fears are. Learn. Figure out who you are and what you're afraid of. Someone who was never validated as a young child, who has these attachment issues, okay? You've had a parent that never ever praised you, that didn't ever tell you, hey, wow, you really look great today. You did awesome job. You got a B? Good job. Good job. You didn't, you know what? That's great for your whatever first time. Validation, you know? What happens if you don't get that as a child? You think, oh, that didn't affect me. That didn't affect me. That didn't hurt me. That didn't harm me. I'm an adult. I don't need that. Okay. What happens when you deep down are longing for that validation because you still don't believe that about yourself? You want validation in your relationship, so you become that stage 5 clinger. You become that person. Hey, what you doing? Hey, what do you think of this? Oh, what do you think of this? Oh, do you like my new hair? Oh, so hey, did you see me doing that wonderful thing the other day? And you're just become this needy person, and you can hear it coming out of your own mouth, and then you can hear yourself, and you go, oh my God, I'm that person. You can't stop it. That's longing for validation. If you know of anybody like that, or you are that yourself, that's childhood issues. That's that little you saying, I still need to be validated. I still need that. What if you fear, most of us will fear our significant other leaving us? I don't want my love to leave me. I'm afraid of that. So how do I create that? I'm going to become that person that is a controlling person. I'm going to kind of box them in. I'm going to make them all mine. I'm going to do any number of things so that I'm afraid that they're going to leave me, so I'm going to pretend that I don't care if you leave me. So in essence, I'm pushing them away because I'm so trying not to tell you how much I need you. 'Cause that wouldn't be cool. This person becomes very annoying, and they end up creating what they fear, because if they become that person that just can't let you go and can't give you air, you're eventually going to want to scrape them off and say, please, just leave me alone. I want to go out with the boys tonight. I just want to go out with the girls. I just want to go see my mom. I just. No, why? Well, those are unmet needs. Those are that's our little less talking. Listen to it and say, yeah, that's about 5 years old. But those are unmet needs. Trusting relationships. Everybody says I want somebody I can trust. That's going to be a trustworthy person. So what are we going to do to create what we fear? I'm going to check their phone, check their gas mileage, ask them who were they with all day, how long, who was it, what'd you talk about? I'm creating what I fear. I'm afraid of not having this trusting relationship, but what am I doing? I'm not trusting this person, right? I'm not trusting this person. That's my stuff. That's all on me. That's nothing to do with them. That's all me. Number 15, people pleaser. Again, this one here is Anita's people pleaser. I was groomed to be a people pleaser in our home. I was cute, had a lot of talent, I could do things, I loved doing things for people. I didn't get the validation, I was second youngest, I was going through all the neglect, and I needed that praise and validation, so I became a people pleaser. I'm going to fix people, and I'm going to make everybody happy. So I could walk into a situation, I could get a bead on anybody, because I'm hypersensitive to everyone, because I was groomed to be that way. So I know what you need, I know what you need, I'm going to do for you. I used to set my guy friends up with women in the bar. I'd say, pick one. And he'd go, I want that one. Give me 5 minutes. And I'd go get that girl, and I'd bring her back. Because I had master manipulator, people pleaser. I would do it every time. It was a bar joke. Of course, I was really popular with all the guy friends, but again, I wasn't doing it because I liked doing it. It was because I needed the validation. I wanted to make them happy. But the problem is if I do and say what others want, I believe that means they're going to love me, right? So I'm going to do mom's chores because then she'll love me. I'm going to get all the groceries from the car so dad doesn't have to carry them, so that he'll love me. I'm going to do things for everybody so they will love me, because I didn't feel loved. I didn't have my basic emotional needs met. I had a roof over my head, clothes on my back, I had food in my mouth. My emotional needs, I was starved. I was a starving Biafran child, emotionally Biafran. So I became that people pleaser because I want them to love me. I will do for others what they should be doing for themselves. So of course you become that person that, oh, let me do that for you. Oh, I'll do it for you. Why are we doing that in a relationship or anything? Because they're going to get dependent on us, and then they can't leave us. That's why I have ulterior motives. It's not because I genuinely want to do something nice for you, no strings attached. Oh, there's strings. There's strings. It's so you don't leave me. I'm going to make them dependent on me so that they can't leave. Yeah, that works. I thrive on their praise and their validation. Again, why? Because I got very, very little. Any praise and validation I got from my older brothers and sisters. So I grew up just starved and a dry sponge. So I became that people pleaser extraordinaire. Number 16, we don't know who we are. So what happens when you get sober and you stop wearing the masks, because Tim points out you're wearing one, and can't isolate anymore because, well, that's on the table now, and you all of the things, all of the unhealthy ways that you learned to cope as a child are now all laying on the table, and you can't use any one of them. Well, who am I? Most of us don't know who we are. You spend a lifetime hiding behind masks and walls. You have no idea who the real you is. We have long ago detached from our true feelings and our true selves. Why? Because we needed to keep them safe. I like the house picture. You've got the main floor of the house there. This is where people can come in. People come in, they visit you. Yep, come on in, come on in. Yeah, it's the family room. Everybody comes to visit. This is your house. This is you. Okay, you got maybe like 10 people that you'll invite into your house. Okay, I'll let you in this close, but that's it. Then you've got maybe 2, 3 people that you're going to let into the basement. Not too many people, because that's going a little deeper, right? Of where you are and who you are. Okay, I'm letting 2 or 3 people in, and they think, I'm close. You're my soulmate, because we know everything about each other. And I'm like, sure we do. No. When I came into recovery, that little door on the very bottom there, little gray door, that's the cellar. There's no light in there. It's gravel, unfinished walls, and there's a dirty little Anita sitting in the corner with her knees up, and her hair's all disheveled and dirty, and she's hiding and she's afraid. That's who I was 4 years ago. Because I had no idea who I am. Because I'd kept myself safe for so long that I had no idea who's the authentically Anita. But that was okay. So when people I've been meeting in the last 4 years say, so what do you like to do? Do you like walking on the beach? I'm like, I'll let you know. I haven't done anything sober since I was 10, so I'm going to have to try everything again, attached with my feelings, to see how I feel about that. I have a response for everything, but that's not authentically attached to my feelings. That's just the crazy thinking and that hamster on the wheel of every situation. Oh, that's the right answer for that. Okay, right answer for that. Right answer for that. That's just living all here, thinking, not attached to who we are. Number 17, victim mentality. This one here a lot of people get caught up in. Some feel very powerless over their lives. You go through a lot of trauma and some really unpleasant memories as a child. Power was taken away from you. You had controlling parents. You can't do this. You can't do that. Everything that you do, you can't. You sleep when I tell you. You eat when I tell you. You go out when I tell you. These are the friends you can have. Everything. You become this person that, when you get out, some people play the victim. I went to school with a girl like this, and when she finally left home, she married the first guy she met, and she became a victim. She became that victim. Like, oh my God, if you knew what kind of life that I had, you would understand why. I'm sorry, but you can't tell me to do anything. I've got oppositional defiance disorder now, because I had that victim mentality. People in the victim mentality, you can't move on from the past. You can't move on from your past, and you can't move forward into your future. You're stuck. You're stuck in a rut, and you can't get out. Some believe that the world owes me because of what happened. Look at, I've been through this. So many people on the system, they say, wow, world owes me. Look at me. Look what happened to me. So many people that I hear, oh, my grandparents were in the residential, the sweep. I'm owed. I'm a victim here. I'm a victim. Got passed down. Sure. Hey, I'm part Native too. I get it too, but you become that victim because you just don't know how to be anything else. You know, you kind of get entrapped in that. And that could very well be because it's a toxic system that gets passed down through the generations. And sure, that person is feeling some of those effects from their parents and grandparents and so on. But that victim mentality, that's a no-win situation. You can't move on from your past, and you can't go into your future. You are stuck. Some people, they believe that, don't expect me to do anything. I'm the victim here. Poor, helpless me. You need to take care of me. I'm the victim here. This is a learned helplessness, a self-pity. You've got different characteristics, different personalities in a home. Everybody has one, their strong personality. You've got one that one of my siblings is very much a victim. He was the weakest. He was sickly. He couldn't be the strongest because that role was taken. He couldn't be the most outgoing because, well, I had that one. And well, it was learned helplessness. It's the only one that was kind of left. He was never validated that, you know what, you could do whatever you want. No, you're sickly. You're the sick one. We don't expect anything from you. He's 50 years old, and yeah. He doesn't socialize with society anymore. False guilt. This one here's fun. What is true guilt? The definition of true guilt is the feeling or remorse over our bad behavior. Something that I've done, I feel true guilt over. What's false guilt? It's the feeling of regret or remorse over someone else's bad behavior. False guilt. True guilt is something I did, I feel guilty for. False guilt is I feel guilty because of something my husband, my wife did, my kid did. I'm feeling guilty. That's false guilt. Where do we learn that from? Again, most of us, that's learned. Unhealthy caregivers may have blamed you for what they did or how they feel, and you believed them. This was always one of my favorites. Look at what you made me do. If you kids did what you were told, I wouldn't have had to beat you. It's your fault. Go bleed someplace else. I actually remember that moment. False guilt. I'm guilty. I'm very young, so I'm forming my thoughts, my perception, my goggles of the world, how I see, how I perceive everything. And I believed I was guilty for pretty much everything. Anybody felt something bad? Well, this is why I became the ultimate people pleaser, right? It goes hand in hand. False guilt. Not something that you did, but you're guilty over something somebody else does. It's a good one. I like that one. Next one. We stopped growing emotionally. When we experience trauma as a child, we stop growing emotionally at the age the trauma occurred. There are lots of little traumas that happen, lots of different ages that those are going to happen. They're going to be different ones, different kinds of traumas. We develop unhealthy ways of coping or doing life because we are now in survival mode. So when a child is traumatized, they stop growing emotionally and they detach from their emotions. It's like a snap, a sever, and they go hide, but they have to still function. So now, as soon as that detachment happens, they are in survival mode. And now it's going to be years later until you figure out how to attach that again. We develop unhealthy ways of coping, doing life, because we are now in survival mode. We lie to get our needs met. We start stealing, manipulating people, bullying to get our way. Most of us in early recovery are emotionally, we're 5 to 10-year-olds living in adult bodies. When I first started my recovery 4 years ago, I was 5 years old. So, good news though, I asked him, I'm like, oh dear God, does that mean I'm going to be 80 and I'll only be like 30, 10, 20? He's, no, you grow very fast. So I'm 54, but I'm about 30 now, and that's been after 4 years. So you do start growing. But you do stop growing emotionally, and that's what happens when a child is traumatized. Well, not just anybody's traumatized. You see somebody that, they're traumatized and they've got that blank stare on their face, they're in shock. They're traumatized, they've detached. Their lights are on, but nobody's home. Yeah, they're detached. You're gonna have to find some way to find them and go in there and get them. Because that detachment, that could last a lifetime. And then, of course, you're going to need lots of drugs and alcohol to numb and avoid, because life's going to get real tough. I think I have one more. So in conclusion, getting honest and real about our deficits can be a humbling experience and very empowering at the same time. When you recognize what your deficits are, out of these 50, make check marks. Go, is that me? Yeah, that's totally me. It's a place to start. It's okay. It's a good place to start. It's humbling. It hurts. But it's so rewarding when you can finally be authentic and you don't have to hide anymore. It's so much easier. It's so much easier. Be gentle with yourself. A lot of people, they feel the guilt and shame and say, well, that just proves that I'm not a very lovable person. I'm a very nice person. So if I admit to these characteristics, no, be gentle with yourself. You're just getting real. There's a lot of real people out there that are going to appreciate you uncovering some of your defects and working on them. This is not about blaming ourselves or our caregivers for their shortcomings. They lived through it as well. This is about recognizing the toxic family system that was passed down to you from your parents, that was passed down to them from their parents, and so on. It's multi-generational. I thought it was just me. No. I looked into my mom and dad's history. How their parents treated them shocked me, blew me away. I was actually, at that point, really glad that I had my parents, because as much as they did harmed me, unintentionally harmed me, they were hurt way worse. And so on, and so on. So that's a toxic family system that gets passed down from generation to generation. So it's not about blaming. Yes, you can be mad at the shortcomings of your caregivers. It's okay to be angry. There's healthy anger that Tim went over, that anything that violates truth, love, justice, and respect, you can be angry over. But, yeah, keep at it. It's worth it. It's worth it being real. Thank you. Let's pray.